Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Saturday edition of the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and we are here live doing the magic that it is that we do. So thank you for joining us here tonight. A very exciting show lined up for you guys tonight. Just amazing. But I'm not here alone. I've got my good friend and co-host, Mr. Longbeard here. Don, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, doing good. It's been a long day, but here we are and doing the thing we love.
We are doing what we love, and we love doing it with you guys out there. So thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the portal. Of course, that's always wonderful. But it's a special night here again, ladies and gentlemen. And our guest tonight is truly just an amazing reservoir of knowledge and experience in the field of studying cryptids and in the paranormal in general. She has decades of experience behind her. She has such an impressive body of work and has done such amazing things, including educating others about, how to work with these creatures in a real positive and peaceful way. And I would just love to welcome to the show Miss Shel Dion. Welcome to the show, Shel.
Thank you, Brent. Am I coming through clear?
Yep, you're coming through good. Thanks for being here again.
Okay.
It's just awesome to have you back. I do hear a little bit of the show in the background. Is the speaker going in behind you or no?
No, there's nothing.
Okay.
Solid quiet.
It could be just a Skype kind of thing, so no worries. But welcome back. And, you've been on the show twice, and every time, 2 hours seems like a lot of time. But I'm here to tell you that in the several hours that we've had the pleasure of talking to you, we haven't even come close to hearing, even a good portion of what you have to say. And so I'm so happy that you chose to come back and be a part of it again. And thank you so much for being here to share what you know.
You're welcome. That was one of the things I wanted to start out saying because just about every show I ever do, people will go and they really just tear you apart in comments on YouTube and stuff. And one of the things is, they try to pick apart something I say, and I've tried to give enough information that people understand things, but I don't elaborate in great single detail on any one thing because there's not enough time. Yeah. And you can't put how many years I've been in the field, 45 years that I've experienced Bigfoot, and then, another 7 years of Dogman stuff, and in the middle of that, being out there every night in the middle of the night all the time, you run into so much other things that you didn't count on, and even during the day doing your investigations, that I couldn't put it into 2 hours if I had to. I mean, right. Still working on books. What I didn't count on happening was something medical that drove me completely out of the field, and I can't elaborate on that, but sure. That's why I've had to retire. And the whole reason for doing your shows was for the people that are listening that really do want to learn, want to understand, not so much for those people out there that are looking to, go on the attack, because unfortunately what I've seen is that these people that do that claim to be your fans. And if they're looking to hurt me, they're not hurting me. I laugh about what they say usually, and they're hurting you guys, the guys out there working hard. So I just want to say to people out there that are listening, if you don't like to listen, you don't like to hear what I say, turn it off. Come back and listen to these guys, these great guys, another day when I'm not here, and think about what you're typing, what you're saying, because it may hurt them and how they feel about what they're trying to present. Obviously, they wouldn't put people on here they didn't feel was credible. So think about that, folks. Just, be nice for a change. It's not all that hard. And all those people out there saying, hey, I haven't seen any evidence. I don't see where I can add a picture on here to blow your minds on YouTube, or I would do it. I have made it accessible on every single show, 3, 4, 5 different ways to get in touch with me. And I'm going to say it right now, cryptoshell@gmail.com. If you really got to get in touch with me, I have not hid my work. I've had it open, but I'm selectful on who I share it with. And it's those negative types that, come at me negative, that they're never going to see anything. Right. Because, that's just how it is. So with that said, tonight I wanted to break into something that nobody's talking about, because nobody's really seen it much. It showed up on deer cams. So people have had video that are sketchy. You don't know if it's real or not, made up or whatever. But I can tell you with my own eyes, I have run into the rake. And I didn't know what it was at the time. I know the government calls it species number 2. So that's what we always referred to it as species number 2. On the first time that I ever saw the rake would have been the year 2007. It had snowed. It was a very cold January night, and this is what blows my mind. This thing is completely hairless. There's not an ounce of hair on it. It doesn't have that much meat on its body, except for like the gluteus muscles and the quads and the hamstrings are really overly developed. But the arms, the legs were kind of spindly. Its head, at first, when I first laid eyes on it, I should start at the beginning of the story. My dog was going crazy. 3 o'clock in the morning, little dog wanting outside. I'm like, gosh, I've let you out how many times? Why you went out in the cold, Right. She doesn't like the cold. And so I always flipped on the floodlights and left them on for a few minutes. It was kind of my cue to the Bigfoot that, hey, I'm going to pop out on you. And, I would give him time to get away. Just once again, I do the respectful thing. This particular night, I turned that light on, and something, you ever have that intuition, that gut instinct that just tell you to do something different or whatever. That particular night, something told me just be quick about it. It's cold. They're not going to be out there. Typically, they're not running around out in the snow anyway, leaving prints. Right. At least around my house, they don't. So I just flipped on the lights and opened up the door, opened up the screen door side, simultaneously. I'm turning on light, doing all at the same time. And I reached to grab the leash that we have, like a little nail hanging on the wall, and diagonal at the back of the yard, the neighbors had their garage where my mom lived. I was staying with my mom because my dad just passed away. The roof was black. It's obviously not a heated garage. And you had all this heavy snow out there. The moon was like a 3/4 moon, was really bright, so you could see so well. If you ever been out at the middle of the night when it's just snowed, everything's quiet and peaceful, and it's where you're right there in one of those crunchy cold nights, And so anything on that black roof moving in that bright reflecting snow light and everything is going to catch your attention, and that's what happened. I'd seen something moving, and it was, this grayish color, not as white as the snow, but real close. And it's moving, and it stops, and it twists its head so jerky. The motions were just like it was a puppet on the string. It was just fast and jerky. Wow. Turns its head and looks at me, and it had tremendous eye shine. Like if you shine your eyes or your flashlight into the eyes of a Bigfoot, you don't get return eye shine. Most animals you do. The dogmen, the wolf creatures, all that stuff, they can turn it on, turn it off, however they choose to do it. But this thing had this really, really reflective gray eye shine that kind of matched its body. And when it seemed to make eye contact with me, and this is all happening so fast. My story seems slow, but it was all really fast. Sure. When it made eye contact with me, it went across the top of that roof on its toes and its fingers like a spider. It literally moved like a spider.
That's creepy.
And
wow.
I shut the door and I was like, and I was like, my immediate thought was alien. Oh my God, it's alien, And then my mind starts slowing down and I'm getting a grip of it all. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to look out there and see what that is. And now I've got my foot and I'm holding my dog back, and I just crack the door and I look out there again, and it pops its head up over the top of that roof and looks right at me with those glowing eyes. And I'm like, no. Lock the door, shut the door. Like, oh my God, why something else? Not again. So then I was on the hunt to figure out what that was, and for years never really got an answer. And then people started catching those things on on cams and stuff, and I was like, that's what I seen. That's the thing. It didn't have a bulbous head like the alien, gray alien type thing. Its head was like just ours. Their body just like a human that has no skin, and it's out there in the night, and it must have really, really good night vision or night sight. But talk about creepy. It's one of the creepiest things I've ever seen in my life. Then moving ahead a couple years, knowing about them and seeing, footprints that their footprint looks like ours. But I would be way out in the middle of nowhere where no human's going to be running around barefoot because they would probably just get their feet sliced apart on debris and things like that. And you're finding it, and I'm like, Right. And they're not that big. And so I would just keep questioning it. And then one time we were way out where my dad and my uncles and my grandfather made this forest preserve. Well, now it's a forest preserve, but they had planted thousands and thousands of trees over acres, and it was kind of that was summer work that my grandpa would make my uncles do. He was Native American. He really believed in, take care of the earth and replenishing what you take. And so they were big. It turned into, when I was in college, this professor I had, he's like, oh, if you guys were opening up this preserve at this place. And I'm like, where's that at? And then he gave me the address. I was like, oh, that's my grandpa's old land, And then, I introduced him to my dad and everything. So I could go out there and I could research all that I wanted anytime I wanted.
Right.
And you go way, way, way out there. You're up and down hills. It's not an easy hike. It's for the advanced hiker. And so it's like I felt like they honestly knew I was coming or something, because this was laid out and displayed right in the middle of where you have to walk. And you could see the footprints all around were not Bigfoot footprints, but would be like naked human footprints. And I'm like, who in their right mind could even get this far out with it? Something not something on their shoes. But the kill, I contacted J.C. Johnson right away and showed him I extensive photos of it, of course, and just psychically trying to get close to that kill that it had left. It was a raccoon. It had taken, you could see where it had been grabbed by the outside arm. It's on its back, So its left arm was pulled up, and its left back leg was pulled back so far that it broke, and there was a plug bite taken right out of the lowest part of the sternum, like where your xiphoid process is, right in that area. It just took a plug right out of it. And the plug we could not find anywhere, but it looked like a human bite. It had like square teeth marks. There was no you could see where fangs usually sink in on something, but it was not like that. And all the organs of that entire animal was laid out. You had the bladder, you had the spleen, you had the kidneys. Everything was there. The heart was not there. The liver was there. And that told me, okay, we're not looking at Sasquatch kill, because they'll eat the liver as one of the first things of protein. And so that was there. And the weird thing about it, all the nerves that attach to all these organs, a nerve looks like dental floss, For those people that aren't too medical out there, a nerve looks like dental floss. So it was still attached to all of them. But there was no veins. There is no blood on the ground. There's no blood where the organs have been laying. They've been licked completely clean. And then when you looked into the carcass, now, judging by the size of the maggots, it had to have been done just before daylight. And then we got there late morning, and it took us a while to hike back to that far. And so it had probably been dead about 6-7 hours. And where the hair is, and the flies, were starting to accumulate and stuff, the hair right around that bite was literally like sucked. You could see it was just like the blood was sucked off of it. Like they were not going to leave one drop of blood at all.
Wow.
And so it just creeped me out so bad. I actually will share these pictures with you, Brent, after the show.
Oh, yeah.
It's creepy as all get out, because it just reminds you of like a modern day vampire or something.
Yeah, right.
It reminds me of the movie Descent. If I've ever seen a creature that I could compare it to, the movie Descent.
Right.
Of course, Hollywood exasperates the way it would look,
Right.
but it does have really poochy lips and a very red mouth, maybe red from stained. But that was really the only color I seen on that critter at all.
Ew.
And it didn't look to be too tall. There's a really good video on YouTube where some kids are playing around a campfire,
Yeah.
and one runs from tree to tree.
Yep.
I can share that with you also. That one looks bigger. It does look like a species number 2, if not a really strange looking naked man. That's all I could say. But these things, they tend to be what I would fear most in the field.
Oh yeah.
I'd rather play with a dog, man, than run up against one of those things. They look terrifying to me.
Yeah.
And looking at their kill, that's some serious bite there.
Right. Now, how can you, in that case, how do you differentiate that almost human-looking print of a rake from like a juvenile Sasquatch? What are the?
Well, usually the juvenile Sasquatch usually put more weight on the balls of their feet, and their mid-tarsal break is so very obvious. I mean, sometimes that's why it's hard to get a castable print at times, is because the middle of the foot doesn't touch down. And usually, if you do have a good castable print, it's deeper at the ball of the foot, deeper at the heel, and then you got a really high instep with them, because their ankle doesn't sit where ours sits. It sits more towards the front of their foot. Right. And so they still have the same bones and stuff, but the muscular structure has to be completely different to move the way they do when they walk. And so if you can imagine, if you had your ankle sitting in the middle of your foot, why they talk about that gait so much, and how it's like a paddle almost as they walk. And so that's the difference right there.
Wow, that is just impressive. And now you mentioned the video, and I know the one you're talking about, but of the several videos out there, which you did mention that one, but there's another one that allegedly seems to come from maybe some Spanish country, maybe Latin America, where some guys are going through the bush and they find one eating a chicken. Does that one look like a rake?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they called it for. I found that years ago when I was searching, and they had labeled it for the longest time fallen angel. But then other people grab things on YouTube, just like they'll grab pieces of this show, and they're only going to play a small part of what I said, and then whatever. But yes, since then it became more available. But they had labeled it, of course. I'm not going to point fingers or be racist or anything, but usually when you deal with the Spanish culture, they're a little more superstitious, and everything is tied to religion, and so they had labeled that as fallen angel. What it is, I really don't know. I don't understand what it is, where it comes from. I do know that for our government to label it species number 2, when we had Bigfoot at species number 5, they've obviously known about it for a very long time.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Well, Shel, that brings up a quick question, because last show we were talking about the wolf people and the wolf soldier, and this wolf soldier was a hybrid, a DNA manipulated hybrid. Do you think
Dogman?
I'm sorry, Dogman. Yes, the dog soldier.
Yeah, the dog soldier.
Yeah, and so do you think that where does in the sense of species number, what is that species number for the dog soldier? Or is this the same kind of thing?
The government is calling them dog soldier. That's why I referred to them that way.
Okay.
I haven't heard them refer to them as a species number. I really have to be quiet on where I get that information.
Sure. Well, but my question would be, why do they call the rake species number 2 as opposed to the dog soldier, specifically the dog soldier? What's the difference in the name?
Because the dog soldier, the government was actually in on creating it. So I think that's why they call it the dog soldier, because there's a whole long story that goes with that, and I'd love to share that with you sometime. Both of you, we should get on a 3-way call, and I'll share that story with you. But essentially, they had made the dog soldiers and I had mentioned in the last show, as a way to not have so much carnage when we went into a war
Right.
like what we did with Vietnam, where you got the jungle and a lot of firing and stuff like that. And they were trying to make something they could put out there that wouldn't, hurt our people so much. And I think what they got in contact with to do it, and the way they went about it, I think they regret it for the most part, because now it's out there, and God only knows how it got out there, who dropped it off or whatever, but it's obviously breeding at a rampant rate from what I've been able to study, what I have witnessed in my own area. It's just a breeding frenzy. It's like, wow. And that's scary to me, because people may be not listening to me right now today and taking what I have to say as word, but 20 years from now, I have a feeling they're going to be searching out anybody that studied this stuff early on and had any knowledge about it. So all you non-believers out there, just tune out, because your kids are going to be tuning in 20 years from now. They're going to be wanting to save their life, their livestock, and anything that they have that moves, because they do have, we are talking about a hybrid, just like Don said, but they do have the animal quality in it. Even the wolf creature, like I said, is benevolent. Reminds you of the Sasquatch. Got straighter legs, similar mid-tarsal break. Just like I told you, I showed you a print that happened earlier today that David found. I never turned my back on them either, because they are part animal, or they wouldn't have that dog head. They wouldn't have that big muzzle and big teeth, So even though I've said they're benevolent and I haven't had any problems from them,
it doesn't mean it won't happen. Yeah.
You would be stupid to be in the field and turn your back on anything that's of intelligence and has the ability to maim, kill, tear you apart, whatever.
Yeah, separate my liver from my spleen. That's a little too much intelligence for me.
Well, exactly. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Think about the Bigfoot going after raccoons and knowing that they're not going to touch the entrails of it because it's full of parasites.
Wow. Yeah. Very intelligent. And
I mean,
you think about things like the killer bees, for instance. That's a well-known example of hybridization and how it went awry, and now they're they're all over the place, and people are having real problems with killer bees. So this is it's not really a foreign concept that our government has a track history of
genetic modifications.
Well, yeah, exactly. Even though that maybe not have been gene splicing, it was definitely hybridization.
Right.
And,
selective breedings, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, think what they say about technology, that we're 40 years behind what they actually have.
Right. Yeah.
And I can attest to that.
Yeah, I bet. Now, we're about 2 minutes out of break, so it's coming. It's already going fast.
Wow, yeah.
And this is the way now.
See, that's why I never get much information out of there. If I slow down and start giving it all, it would just take days and weeks and months.
I know, and I wish we had a show that long, because I'd love to sit for every minute of it. Believe me, but it's always amazing, and this rake. The rake discussion to me is incredibly profound and unnerving. You said it crawled like a spider, and to me that the visual of that is so
It
disturbing.
reminded you of a spider because it was jerky.
Oh yeah, Eesh. And the fact it's got that no hair, it's this spindly thing, but it's stronger than hell.
Yeah.
I mean, you just know it is because it survives in the wild. Very amazing.
Reminds me of aliens. I mean, the same thing. I've come into contact with aliens. It's just like, oh my God, that little thing it moves and it picks heavy things up, and it's like, oh God. Yeah. Some of that stuff's just so scary. You just don't even want to see it again.
Right. Oh man, I don't blame you. I'm not sure I'd want to see it the first
time.
Even just watching the YouTube videos of
it's creepy.
Is enough to make me go, nope, I don't ever want to see that in real life ever. When that thing is chewing on the chicken and those guys stumble on it, and it had to have heard them coming, but it was just kind of doing the whole, I'm going to sit here and not move and maybe they'll miss me. And then when it was sure it saw it, it looks over its shoulder and those eyes are just just
I see.
yeah, they are just cold eyes. And
That's exactly what I experienced. And,
oh,
I searched till I found it. And I'm like, I was jumping up and down in the kitchen going, this is it, Mom. I found it. Here it is. Because I wanted her to see it so bad because I was afraid she would open the door and run into it.
oh my God. So I do want to touch on that a little bit more when we
Definitely.
come back because I'm curious as to anything else you might have uncovered about it. And I know it's an extraordinarily rare kind of occurrence, but I'm
It
just curious
happens
about your
enough.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is turning up, and people are finding these things on trail cams and stuff. So, but we'll be right back after these messages, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away for another hour and a half of incredible
Intense.
discussion here on the
Intense.
Paranormal Portal. So we'll be right
Wow.
back.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Paranormal Portal. I am Brent Thomas, and we are underway again here on the show. And I just want to take a quick moment to thank three of our YouTube listeners. So it's Regla Girl, Kurt, and Elemental Arts. We just enabled Super Chat as a method for people to help support the show, and you guys all three just
Jumped right on
just jumped right on it, and I can't thank you guys enough. That's so cool. We really appreciate every little bit, so thank you guys so much. That was just amazing. But of course, Don and I are here, and we are joined tonight by our special guest, Miss Shel Dion, who is here talking about cryptids and so much more. Thanks for being here again, Shel.
My pleasure.
Now, before the break, we were talking. Well, we talked about several things, but with the rake. My God, I forgot what I was going to ask. Oh my God, I just went totally blank. I'm getting old.
Oh Jesus!
What was it about it? There was something I was really I was curious about. Now, as you've researched this and as you've looked into it, and I realized the amount of information out there is extraordinarily limited, and your personal experiences with it was extraordinarily limited. However, they were obviously incredibly intense, and probably don't want a lot more of those experiences. But what you brought to the table that it looks like they feed on blood, which I thought was incredibly interesting because, of course, the chupacabra is another thing that's rumored to drink blood, and the variations of those is everything from this almost bipedal thing with spiny back to this dog thing that's, people are now calling chupacabra in the south of the U.S. and like Texas and such. But has anything else been learned, or have you heard anything more about these rake?
No.
Okay.
I know nothing about the chupacabra.
Okay.
If there's people out there saying, "Oh, she's a know-it-all," hello, no, I don't know everything.
No.
I've never run into anything like that. Don't want to, but I did run into something that I think is worthy of bringing up. It's only taken me years to come up with, searching it on the web to find out what me and my student had witnessed in the swamp one night.
Uh-huh.
And I'll never forget it. When something really significant happens, you'll have the date and everything. It was September 17th of 2015, wow. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning exactly. We were in his 4x4 Jeep, and he had this outrageous thermal and night vision equipment. He's a senior student, been with me forever, comes here, used to. This year I had to quit researching, but he always come out here every summer so he could go and do. And so it was just him and I that night, and he had his equipment on his side of the truck and me on mine, and we're in this one-lane road that literally you got to ride your brake to get down because the road's been washed out so many times. It's gravel, and straight off swamp water on either side. I mean, it's kind of a dangerous place to be honest with you. Uh-huh. But the Bigfoot activity there is off the hook, and it's so much fun. They interact fun. They do crazy things there, and we were there, seeking that only, just to see what would happen, out there with the Bigfoot. And we had stopped. We were sitting quietly, and there was this, like a beach, a silty beach like area, the distance of about 40 feet from us. Mm-hmm. And Mark says, "Hey, Shel, there's something on your side of the car just about 40 feet from you. What is that?" And so I put up I had the night vision, and I put it up to my eye, and I'm looking at that, and I'm like, I use the ocular because I hate the way it blinds you when you look through that, and then you're trying to see then in the night, and you can't see nothing. Right, and yeah. So I choose to use one that's just a one eye. That way you still have one eye to help you get out if you got to get out, Right. So I was using the ocular, and I see this thing that the legs were very chunky. It had a very long tail to it. Oh. It was approximately 4.5 feet tall.
Wow.
Its nose and its face come down conular like an anteater almost. And it kind of had like a pointed head. I didn't see any spine ridges or anything that would say chupacabra.
Okay.
The strange thing is that it was working with its hands, like it was bending over in the water, washing its hands, and it would stand up and it was like licking or smelling its hands. And we watched it for like 20 minutes. We were sitting there just in the silence and the pure darkness, just watching this thing. And the only way we could see it is by using, night vision and thermal.
Sure.
And so we're switching back and forth equipment, to each other. And I said, give me that thermal. I want to video this stuff. He forgot to put the SD card in it.
Oh, no.
So he didn't get it.
Oh no.
So for years, I thought about this chunky-legged thing that looked like some kind of fat-bottomed dinosaur in the swamp. And so I was searching up all the different kind of cryptids that are out there, and I came up with this thing. I can't even say the name, and I think it started with an SH. It was like a Sharpape or Charlape or something like that. Sounded like some kind of Chinese or Japanese name of some sorts. But there is a cryptid out there that fit that description. Wow. And I remember sending it to Mark going, I found it. And it was only like 3 years later. But been to the swamp many times since then, have never seen it. That swamp is probably an hour away from where I'm at here. So I've always been on the lookout for that thing again and never seen anything like it.
Wow. Now, are these things, do you suppose, just so rare and few in numbers is why we don't ever experience them? Or are they just...
I just think it's location. I think it's, like Bigfoot and, we're talking all the canines. They seem to want to be right on the edge where humans are, unless they're the really wicked ones that want to stay way out there and away from us.
Sure.
But, Bigfoot seem to like study us. They like to look through our windows and stuff like that.
Right.
Where this thing and where I'm talking about, people don't go. And so maybe there are, and I think it's probably low numbers. I don't think there's a lot of them, or I would have run into them in other places.
Right.
Because trust me, I have been a lot of places and spent a lot of nights in the field and never come across anything like that. Never a print that I couldn't identify. And I could not identify that print if I ever seen it. I know, because it looked so strange. I always wondered, what did the back feet look like as far as, and there's no way to get out there to it.
Okay.
Because it was out in the swamp, in the water, on the silt. Somebody goes, oh, you seen a bear? And I go, yeah, a bear with a tail like Barney. Okay, I seen a miniature Barney. That's what I seen. I hung on that for the longest time. I seen a miniature Barney. It was a kind of a joke.
A Tyrannosaurus.
A Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said, stuff like that, yes.
Oh, that's hilarious. But no,
so there are things out there that we're not come across yet. How much else is out there, God only knows. That was the one thing, and then last year, the whole thing with the Mothman came up, and I cracked that wide open, accidentally, as usual. I didn't go looking for it. Okay. Dogs went out in the middle of the night, and it was towards the end of May, not of this last summer, but the year before. And David goes out with me because I have been, having some problems the last couple of years, So he was on the front porch, and I took my smaller dog out, and she even though she begged to get out there, she wasn't going to the bathroom. And you could have heard a pin drop. And that time of the morning, you don't hear any birds squawking or anything, even though, they're nesting and all that kind of stuff. It was dead silence. And you could just feel like you're being watched. You felt there's a predator around there. And so I had motioned to David that something's going on. We have our own version of sign language for him in the night,
Sure.
And I'm like pointing to my eyes and I'm telling him, look that way, I'm pointing to a different direction because my dog was alerting. She was pointing to this open lot that has a few giant mature trees on it, big oak trees that are full grown. They'd probably been here for 100 years. Anyway, she kept looking and pointing in that direction. I'm going, go to the bathroom. I'm getting cold. Come on, hurry up. Right. She just dead set on pointing. And so I was looking in that direction, but I was looking lower than where she was looking. And then something just shot up out of the trees. And it was pretty bright moon that night. So I seen this, and it was a cloudy haziness, and so you could see this. It looked like a bullet, like something just shot up out of the tree. And after a few hundred feet, it went so fast, and after a few hundred feet, you just didn't see it anymore. It was just gone. And I was like, "Oh my God, did you see that, David?" And he's down off the porch and on the ground, and he's looking up too, like, "What did you see?" You know? And all of a sudden, here it comes, and it's like angling down, and there's a street light, like, well, it's like 2 houses away. It's where we kind of live like a dead end street, and it kind of curves at the end, and we're wild behind us, we're wild to the south of us. Anyway, so this thing comes flying in front of the street light, and you could hear this wings just flapping, but it didn't. The wings were motionally flapping. They were out steady, but they had this like rubber sound, is what I'm trying to say. It was like that kind of a flapping noise. And the wing spread on it was about 5 to 6 feet wide, and it literally just smashes into the street. Across the street, there's this evergreen tree. It smashes into it, and all the birds just come flying and squawking out of it and stuff. And because it was dark, and it's so dark, just one street light does not do much over here in the thick of things. It's just black out there. I couldn't see it. And I'm doing everything I can. David went and he got his long, flashlight, and we're shining in that direction, and we just couldn't shine it far enough, and we didn't see any more movement. So obviously it was in that tree, because the tree was moving and shaking and stuff. It was in that tree, probably raiding the nests. And so that set me on a quest that I wanted to figure out, okay, something else. What's it going to be this summer? Because at that point, I wasn't going out in the field anymore. I was just kind of hanging around home. I have enough around here. I don't have to, And so I just kept waiting, never seen it. And it was a month later, all of a sudden they're saying, no, there's Mothman in Chicago. And I'm like, I highly doubt that. And anyway, so I just kept doing my thing. And when I did go up north, because David's from up north, and I'd ride passenger in the back seat just so with my camera, just so I could check some things out, because I had some theories. We live 6 miles from the second largest limestone quarry in North America, and Chicago was built with limestone. So if you drive if you get out of the main city and you're just all the suburbs that grew together because it's so vast, you're driving in and around all these different quarries, and they're generally located along the Illinois-Michigan Canal and the Chicago River and all that, where it comes together. And you could usually look down. You have to lean way over to see down in there, and you can see green water. They used to let people swim in those things, but since the 60s and stuff, and because they're so deep and stuff, they put up big fences with razor wire, and they've got to keep gang members from out there graffitiing, getting themselves in trouble, dumping bodies. All kinds of stuff happens in Chicago. It's a rough place. Chirac, that's what we call it. Anyway, there's guardrails going around and stuff, so cars won't go off. So I start looking as we were just happened to be going up there, and I'm like, man, there was so much rain this year. I have never went by these quarries and seen them within 50 feet to the brim. And I was like, I wonder if that has anything to do with that kind of bat creature thing at home. So I started taking pictures. Click, 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 click. Next time we left, there's the same thing. Click, 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 click. Water levels aren't going down. It just, last year was, not this last year, but the year I'm talking about, it was a terrible growing year. And so it was on my birthday, and I was sitting on the back porch in a lawn chair where Dave was out picking through the garden, getting stuff. And usually my dog is chasing rabbits that time of night, having fun with the other dogs and stuff. And she was underneath my chair. She would not move, and she's just like looking up. She's got her ears hanging down weird, and I'm like, what is your problem? And so I picked up my camera, and it happened to be one of those times I had a decent camera on me. And so I'm scouring the whole tree line. And I'm like, what is looking at us? It's got her so worked up, because I could feel it too, just like that night. I could feel eyes on me. And so I finally just followed her path of vision straight up beside me and about 50 feet up in that tree, 60 feet, here is this bat-like creature standing. And, I mean, you don't need a camera to see it. It's very visible to the naked eye. You can see its wings hanging down past its feet. It had, like, canine feet, and it's standing on a branch. And the picture is very, very clear, very good. It wasn't taken with a cell phone. It was a D3200 with a 24 megapixel, and I had the 55 zoom on it. I didn't have the great big lens, unfortunately, or it could have been right in its face. But it was good enough that you could see the color of the skin. You could see the teeth on it, like it's a mammal, obviously.
Right.
And when David came away from the garden and he's got a shirt full of vegetables, I said, you need to get the dogs, you need to keep hold of them, and you need them in the house. I said, there's something up in that tree. So he turned around and he looked. He goes, oh, is that bullet thing? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going to try to get a comparison of it.
Right.
And so I sat there for an hour by myself, and dark was coming down on me. And finally, it leaned its head over and started itching its shoulder. In the picture, you can see that it kind of blurs its head because it's moving, but you don't see the eye shine anymore. The sun on its eyes was the same reflectiveness that we're talking about with species number 2, or the rake. It had very reflective eyes, and they weren't red or any crazy color. They were just a silver color, normal that you'd see with a dog. Just like the night that it went flying into that tree, there was no red glowing eyes. It does have a muzzle on it. It does have very tall, pointy ears.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely some kind of species that I would relate to as a mammal. Related to canine, they have the flying canine, like the fox canine,
right,
bat canine thing in Australia and some of those New Zealand, those places like that. It would be like that, only on a much larger scale.
Wow.
J.C. Johnson was working with me on that. Because there was so much Mothman stuff coming out at that point. All summer long, it's Mothman. And he's like, can you get me a picture of that tree without it, tomorrow? And I said, duh, most definitely. You always want to take your comparison, the same weather, the same time of night, and try to just recreate, as soon as you can, the same scenario. And so the next night I was out there, there's nothing there. I get the comparison. It was like 5 o'clock in the evening, August. So, the sun was just right on it. Perfect. So there was nothing in that tree. Perfect. Got the comparison. Mm-hmm. So then I started handing off all the quarry stuff that I'd been working on all summer. And another little critter that I think might have been the young of this thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to call it. It's definitely not Mothman, I know that. But we figured, what JC and I had figured, with the distance and everything, it was probably about 5.5 feet tall, wow, including its complete tip of the ears to, to its feet. Now, the wings did hang down longer and kind of wrapped around it. There were no free moving arms. When I got a picture of its young, we were out early morning just walking around for a little exercise and stuff, looking for prints. What I had observed, and I just had my cell phone on me, but I still got a pretty decent picture because it wasn't too far away. All the squirrels were bunched up. There was 4 or 5 squirrels, and they were all running across the road like they're running from something. Mm-hmm. And right away I bumped to David, and I was pointed, and I looked, look, because we go silent in the field mostly. Sure. When we see something, it's usually more, mm-hmm, we're very careful so that we don't alert something that we're actually paying attention. Right. And right then, and this is the craziest thing, I had picked up my phone and zoomed in on it just so I could see, is there something running those things? What's around us, Right. And I see this little black thing, and so I look away from the camera, and I'm looking towards it, and I see nothing to the naked eye, and one of those squirrels gets picked off. Ew. And so I hurried up and I followed it, and it went underneath this evergreen tree, and there it is. There's this black little critter, and it's the same thing. It's got wings tucked behind its back, and there's another one down on the ground beside it, and he's already shared his meal. He's already dropped off that squirrel and looking to pick up another one. He's in position to take off. So you get a really good detailed look of its feet, and I can share all this stuff with you, sure, Brent, after the show or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it obviously belonged to or had close relative to that one I got in the tree in August.
Mm-hmm.
And this picture that I took of that thing would have been in the middle of the summer. So I'm thinking, okay, so when I got a picture of that thing in August, it had all these teats that looked like they were just like a dog after, it's weaned its puppies. They hang and they're kind of worn out. That's the way it looked. So that thing was probably its young.
Oh, okay.
And I did not, that was in the year 2017, 2018. I really did not spend the amount of time out there outside doing anything.
Yeah.
But David did. David's an outdoor guy, and he is the other half of Whisper Walkers. People don't count him out.
Right.
So he, I tell him, before you go outside, I'd say, hey, be looking for that thing, be paying attention, and
Mm-hmm.
there was never any more instances of it at all. And I do sometimes would just take my little dog, go sit back on the back patio for some fresh air and stuff, and I never visualized anything else after that.
Huh. Now, you do mention throughout many of these stories the eye shine, and that is something that I've always found intriguing. And one of the things that I personally wrestle with is understanding how do creatures have
The difference?
Well, how do they have glowing eyes? So many people say
okay.
that there's these creatures that have glowing eyes, and as I understand the way optics work, if something is emitting light, how can it receive light? And so, so many people say it looked at me and it had these large glowing red eyes. And I'm trying to understand, is that a bioluminescence? Is there something?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
This is a long story, and I'll put it as short as I can.
Yeah, we have like literally 4 minutes before break, so if we have to break it up
It's
in the middle.
perfect.
Okay.
All right, so a friend of ours that is a doctor that studies underwater sea animals was working with Freeman out there on the West Coast, and he said, I seen some things from the shoreline. He goes, I want to take you out on the boat. He says, I want you to tell me if that's what you've been calling Bigfoot. And so he did, and Freeman said, yeah, that's their eye shine, that's their eye glow, that's how they communicate with all the flashiness and the colors and all that. He says, well, this really reminds me of the seals up in the Arctic, where they go underneath the water and they use the reflective, they turn their eyes on to hunt. And yet during the day, you got these black eyes, you don't have sclera. Bigfoot does not have sclera. There's a lot of species out there that do, some don't, but regardless, they can turn this on. And so this guy quit his job. He was a doctor, quit his job doing what he was doing with the university, and solely just worked on writing a paper. And it was all completely, he put it to peer review and everything, and supposedly it should be coming up in a book. Just understanding the cones in the eyes and how many cones you had to have in your eyes to have eyes that you could illuminate at will or not turn, or not have them on at all. And why eyes that would have that many cones, and why humans don't have reflective eye shine either. So it's really interesting. We got to see, he sent it to us in a PDF file, and I get to read the main parts of it, and it was extremely interesting. And I hope that he does get his book out there. Humans can have reflective eye shine. They can. You just got to catch a human just right. That's why I think sometimes we have some reflective eye shine from Bigfoot, and other times none. You can have a camera right in their face, like the Pennsylvania white Bigfoot. The guy's right up in his face, got the light right on him, and his eyes don't reflect at all. There's no reflectiveness. So anyway, I do believe this too, and it's not proven. I don't have, it's just a theory here.
Sure.
But I don't believe that every single Bigfoot out there has the capability or it has the breeding to have those eyes that turn on and off. I think there's, it goes with the 7 different breeds that I know of.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting, and I appreciate you addressing that, because that's always been a personal conundrum for me, is like, how does that work? What is going on? And can they see if they're emitting light? But that's wonderful. So that helps me to
I
understand.
have more to say on that too.
Sure, and we can get into
We
that
wait
on
to
the
come
other.
back.
Yeah, we'll get into more of that when we come back. But we're about 30 seconds out. But of course, tonight we're joined by Shel Dion of Whisper Walkers and Tree Peekers, and she is here to discuss cryptids of all kind. And it's just been an amazing
Crazy
journey.
ride.
I know it's just so awesome, and I just find myself just sitting here glued. You know, I'm just I forget to even talk sometimes because it's like I just want to hear what's coming next. So I'm sure you all are out there are enjoying the show as much as I am, and thank you all for being here and being a part of it. But we're going to go to our break now, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back in just a couple minutes for more of tonight's show with Shel Dion here on the Paranormal Portal. So don't go away.
All right.
Everybody likes to play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across my heart. Raging anger pours inside me, and their lies keep falling apart. But I'm not joking, yeah. I'm not joking, yeah. I'm not joking, yeah. I am finished with my silence. I am not a stupid boy. No more breaking me with kindness. Just you dance upon my joy. Leading me with empty promise. You're just another fucking mess. Taking off the slice of my sanity. Just make sure that you're well fed. I'm not wrong yet. I'm not joking yet. I'm not joking yet. I'm not joking
I can't see you, Mommy. Where are you? I've never sensed anything like it. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force. It is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeist are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are of fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second hour of the show.
Oh, they're funny.
Yeah, the chat room's always keeping Don chuckling, which is good. It's awesome. And it's funny because he had his, if you're watching on the YouTube feed, you can see Don, of course, had his headphones up like Mickey Mouse. I said, what the hell, is that a Mickey Mouse look? And then people in the chat room were saying the same thing. So great minds, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I got to say. But we're having an epic journey here tonight on the portal. We are joined by our amazing guest, Miss Shel Dion. Welcome back, Shel. And before the break, we kind of had to split what you were saying up there, but we were talking about eye shine in these cryptids, and you were explaining some things, so I will let you return to your thoughts.
Oh, okay. Well, one time I was gifted in the way that I was able to stand in front of a Bigfoot with my research partner beside me. Like I said, I won't claim anything if I don't have a witness or I don't have a picture to prove it. But this is one time I actually had somebody to corroborate that they were standing next to me. The sun was setting behind us, and he was just at the edge of the forest, and we were standing on the outside, like at the entrance. And he was speaking a lot of English, so I was able to communicate with him very well. And he's looking down at me, and I'm looking way up at him. And his eyes, I mean, it was a very intimidating moment, I'll tell you, because you never really get used to their size. I don't care who you are, and how you get past your adrenaline states or whatever. When you're standing next to something 12 feet tall at 1,200 pounds, that just one swipe could just send you into the next realm there. It's intimidating. Yeah. And what I found fascinating was, and this was early on into my, research with them as far as behaviorism and stuff, when it turned from them chasing me and me chasing them all night long for years, that went on. And all the damage and stuff that happened to our homes and all the crazy stuff. So now I've turned the page and I'm into really being able to communicate with them and learn about them. And so if I could reach out my arm straight, I could tickle his belly button. We'll put it that way. And so I'm looking up at him, and the sun is catching his eyes. And what I've noticed that was just fascinating was, well, for one, their eyes are so deep set. And that's one of the things is people adapt to their environment, just, humans do. They're no different. They've adapted because if they've got these pointed heads and they've got these deep set eyes, it's much easier to go through the brush and brambles and not have your eyes popped out. And I don't know about you guys going through the woods and stuff, how many times you got your hands straight up in your face or you're wearing sunglasses on not a sunglass day because you're protecting your eyes. Well, their eyes are really deep set, and it makes them look this black triangular look, Well, they're kind of bulbous. They kind of stick out a little bit, and when the sun was hitting the eyeball itself, it looked like hundreds of hexagons, and all those little hexagons were picking up different light as he was moving his eyes. So I could see why that when they turned them on, they got these different arrays of emotion colors and stuff that they can use, because just at relaxed state, and then him not even thinking about his eyes, and me just observing everything that I can and taking in everything that I could in that moment, just because it's so rare to get that close to one.
Wow.
His eyes were absolutely amazing to see all of that, and yet there was a pupil there too. And I didn't think there was a pupil because their eyes are always so dark, and you always see it in a picture. It's usually blurry. At that point, we didn't have the pixels back then that we do now.
Sure.
So getting really up close and seeing their eyes was not something you could do with a camera. So it happening in person was, there's just no money on that. That was amazing.
Right.
And so I've never seen anything on Earth that had eyes like that.
Wow. It's so intense, isn't it? I mean, just these amazingly adept and fantastical beings are just living around us, and for the most part, we're absolutely oblivious.
Only because we want to be.
Yeah. But they don't make it easy, though. I mean, really, when you think about it, they are elusive, what I understand, and I can't claim to have any kind of experience as yours, but what I understand is they just don't seem to trust us a whole lot, and maybe rightfully so. I mean, we haven't really earned that trust.
I would say so.
But
their intelligence is so far better than ours because they read you like a book.
Right.
I mean, they know what you're thinking before you've even had a chance to realize it yourself.
Uh-huh.
And so they know what we're capable of. They know what, so that has everything to do with, and then you get into why I used to teach about them and people wanting encounters, but yet going out in the field, they could never produce it. And a lot of that, and I've talked to you about this, is the need and the want to have that. And if you're wanting it and you're needing it and you're just about to beg for it, it's never going to happen for you.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to you got to be paying attention to yourself. You got to do your own thing. And that's when things will happen. But even then, it takes years, years for a clan. Like, I've worked with clans all over the place, and each one of them are at different stages, because you don't just go and do, and it's just going to happen overnight. It's not like that. It's time. You got to invest time in it, but yet you don't want to make yourself a nuisance. You don't want to be there constantly. So you pick different places and you research different places, and you just, some of them work faster than others with you. Other ones, are more timid. Other ones will pick right up on it because they're like all into whatever you're doing. We've had David's been out fishing one time, and every time he catch a fish and put it in the bucket, they take off with his fish, and he'd miss it every time, and he'd get so mad. It's so funny. My son, he has a lake property area that David went out fishing, and I was just, spending some time out with the kids on the boat because my son and my daughter both do water sports and stuff. So I just ride and enjoy watching what they do,
Right.
And so I'm out there doing that, and I got back, and it was getting, close to dark, and I, setting up on the dock, just enjoying watching more sports, but that I couldn't be on the boat with. I could just sit back, and I was using the long-range camera and taking pictures for him. That's why I was there. My son wanted great pictures for his business. And so I was sitting there, and Dave's fishing like a bandit, and he's got all the local kids are up there fishing with him. And so he's got this, he caught himself a nice big catfish, and he's got it on this expensive line, he's got it hooked to the dock, and that this one little kid looks at it, he's like, "Hey, what happened to your line?" And there goes the line taken off. Dave dives in the water. He's not going to lose that fish. He's going after it. Well, it was kind of funny because he's got clothes and everything, and so I take a picture. I'm taking pictures as this is happening, and I'm totally missing what my son's doing because I'm busy laughing at David taking ridiculous, hilarious pictures. But the weird thing is when he gets his fish and he's coming back up, he's kind of mad that it's even happening. He don't understand it. Under the water, swimming face up, you could see a Sasquatch, like a juvenile Sasquatch was like swimming on its back straight up. And so that's probably what took off with his fish again. He has the worst luck with fishing and the Sasquatch. But that's why they'll come up and be around him, is because he's so into what he's doing. And Dave is, the ultimate fisherman. If you put that ever on anybody, it's Dave. And so he's all into that. He could care less about anything else. Mm-hmm. But what does that win him? a ton of attention from them. So if you're really wanting the encounter out there, if you're really wanting to experience them, then you got to get it out of your head. The finding Bigfoot, don't find nothing. It's the guy that goes out there and he's just being. He's out there with his dog. He's out there with his kids. He's out there with his fishing pole. Yeah. That's what I say time and time and time again to my students. Just be. If you just be, go play Frisbee with your dog, do stuff like that in an area you found their, stuff, that's how it's going to happen. And I'm telling you what, I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I've never wore a gun on my hip. J.C. Johnson was constantly telling me, you need to be doing that. My son constantly telling me, you need to be armed. Yeah, why am I still here if I needed that? Right. I didn't.
Right.
I didn't need it. There's ways about going to, a lot of common sense, safety first, right. And when you do start, things start happening that you're paying attention to the negative quickly and responding quickly and being respectful about it, going, okay, I'm out of here, out of your way, I'm going. Right. That's the way we've done everything. It's the way we always did everything. And, if I was still out in the field to this day, I'd still be doing it. I wouldn't change anything I do.
Well, bringing up the fact of firearms is the one common thread. Even people that are armed and do meet up with these things, these beings, the biggest thing they say is, I knew I had a gun, but I knew if I used it, it would only make this thing mad.
Right.
Yeah. It's like
that's my point.
Yeah.
I know that.
Right.
I know that there's nothing as far as artillery that you could literally carry that's going to do anything. And there is hundreds of instances where they got one mad, and it didn't matter what the one is. I'm saying in a big blanket statement here of one, and they did a bunch of shooting, and it took a ton and half a infantry to take it down. So why would you carry this little handgun on your hip? What's it going to do for you? Unless you got a bunch of people and you're carrying AK-47s and there's a bunch of you, you're really at the bottom of the food chain there.
Right. Yeah, and we're, as far as us in the wilderness, we are clumsy, we are awkward, we're not good in the wilderness, even though many people like to believe that they are. And granted, some people are much more adept than other people, but in comparison to the wildlife, we are clumsy oafs and have no coordination. We stumble through things, and we don't know how to live on the terrain and experience that, or have a balance with the terrain like that. So, and these things, as these beings, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like I'm disqualifying them in any way. I don't. I have nothing but reverence in my heart for these beings. But people that have experienced them say they move in such a fluid and graceful fashion that you would never expect from something this size. It's just enormous, but it glides through the forest with effort and hardly bobbing even up and down. They just kind of, I don't know, the explanations.
And that's where the name Whisper Walkers came from, because you could be out there and you got this giant and he's moving all around you and you don't hear it. You just don't hear it.
Wow.
You could see him, and you're going, oh, my God.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just like they float through it, and it's just like, and they can move at the speed where if you blinked your eye, you would have missed it. It's just unbelievable. In so many ways, there's so much to be known about it. And unfortunately, I want to say this to the masses. I've sat back for years. I've been come to Facebook in like 2008 with research, and I've taken their beatings and their mouthing and everything else, and I've never really spoke out to it. But here I am. I'm going to speak out to the masses right now. If you guys don't shape up and get your act together and start working together, You're never going to learn much of anything. Everybody's going to have a little bit here to offer and a little bit there and a little. And it's never going to amount to anything because you're all in competition and it's all jealousies. If you don't get past yourself and humble yourself down, you're never going to learn enough to amount to anything in this lifetime that's ever going to help your grandchildren or their grandchildren. So get it together, people. That's what I want to say to the Bigfoot community and the dog man community. It's like, come together. Stop fighting with each other. Stop trying to drag each other down and discredit each other because not one journey is the same. Right. I have taught hundreds of peoples. I've been beside hundreds of peoples. I've worked with hundreds of researchers, and not one of them have the identical journey. Not one. They're all different. And if that's not collaborated, guess what? You think the government's going to help you? You think he's going to teach you about it?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you, if you even call and report something like that, you've got MIV all over you. And I know of many, many, many great researchers that have been silenced by them.
Oh, is that?
So,
wow. That's amazing. That's scary, though. That's like scary kind of stuff.
It is scary. It is scary. Because there has been times where researchers, things turned extremely bad for them. And they had to, try and defend themselves, or there's lots of stories that people got killed. You hear about it all in these podcasts, but you don't hear about it in the news. If you guys tune into Whisper Walker's like page, Dave is great at what he does by finding stories and stuff and putting it out there and on that page of instances that people come forward and they shared it with someone, and so their story is told. And a lot of ex-military people are coming forward, and I think that's fantabulous, because if anybody's going to be credible and be able to say, look, I was armed and there was nothing I could do, you're going to trust your Marines. You're going to trust that they were with a bunch of their pals out there fighting against something that, quote unquote, the government put out there. And the government's going, take it out, Right. So we need it taken down, It's a really vast topic. There's just one person alone could not touch everything. I can't begin to touch my research in just what I've spent 3 shows with you, 2 hours each, 6 hours, and each one was on specific topics. And there's just no way to ever get out there as much as there is that I've collected in that amount of time. So if people started collaborating and people started working together, geography plays a big part in this when you're talking all these different species and stuff. So, if people start coming together in their own general areas and just working together, I'm not saying go out in the field as like 15 people, because nothing's going to happen, but take your notes, take everything you've logged, take your photographs, start collaborating. Maybe you could start uncovering truths instead of just having theories and, coming up with your own conclusions, but actually having a whole community of conclusion, I think would be a better way of approaching all of the above. I mean, all this cryptid stuff, because this cryptid stuff goes far and wide. There's a lot of stuff out there, and that I haven't even touched on aliens and UFOs and all that stuff that you think that never exists, and you're never going to have to face that down. And oh God.
Well, I'm here to tell you. I've witnessed a UFO right in front of me. I mean, I've seen it in real life, and so I have no question that they're here and they are around. And it was probably one of the most awesome moments of my life, just realizing, I always had an open mind for those things, but to see it and to experience it was like, I was.
You feel insignificant.
Well, I just felt I felt both insignificant and incredibly fortunate, because I was experiencing something that I'd always thought was possible, but there it was in front of me, and I felt, well, like, wow, how lucky am I get to experience this in my lifetime. And there's so many people that are looking and never will see anything extraordinarily like that. And so I really felt really fortuitous. I felt like, someone was throwing me a bone and giving me an experience that I could never forget. And it's true. It just changes everything when the world opens up like that right in front of you.
Yeah, I know. I think our first real huge UFO incident, my daughter happened. I was in a convertible, and it was just starting to dark out. It was me and my mom and her together, and my daughter was so terrified to even go outside at night after that. It just, it's hard to wrap your head around as an adult, but for a child even. So to this day, my daughter's constantly scanning the sky. Like, she's terrified of that stuff.
Right.
And you're part of my group. You've seen where I just popped outside to take a dog out, and I was like, oh, look at this, or whatever. I'm always doing some live feed or something to show you guys, hey, there it is.
Right.
And it's amazing some of the stuff that we've seen. Pictures. I had a crop circle right in my freaking backyard and got a picture of the UFO on the ground and the beings. And that's just what blows my mind. One of the beings looks like it's human and in some kind of military uniform, and it was in the windows of this thing. And that makes me think that there's more government involvement than meets the eye.
Yeah. Well, that's the other side of it too. Is like how many of these UFOs are just ours and reversed engineered,
Right, yeah.
And that's something that we've explored on the show a few times, and it's the big questions, and you have to wonder, even with like all the cryptids, how many do they know of? Well, obviously, if they're cataloging them and giving them a species number, they've got so much more awareness than they're giving us, and for whatever reasons, whether I have theories, of course, but we don't understand the nature of our reality. We really don't. I think we get little breadcrumbs here and there, and sometimes they happen in weird ways, like seeing, UFOs or seeing cryptids or, whatever it happens to be, that just kind of expands the whole picture in one beautiful moment. It's like, boom, everything's changed. The reality I knew and understood my whole life is now, it was only a small part of the puzzle, and it's so much bigger. It's just dynamic and incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things, they have been telepathic with me, and I've admitted to that, which was a hard thing to admit because it was something I didn't believe in. And I talked about that in the first Cryptid show.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they repeatedly kept mentioning to me, and I didn't know or even have a clue what they were talking about, was parallel dimensions. They're always saying parallel dimensions. And I'm like, what is parallel dimensions? What really is parallel dimensions? Well, I could talk a whole show on that. I mean, we have parallel dimensions. I mean, when you run into your wife in the store, oh my God, what are you doing here? You hug each other. You're right in each other's dimension. And then yet you'll see that guy that lives across the road go into the mailbox at the same time you are. Your mailbox is right next to his, and you kind of step back and just wait for him to be done. You kind of don't get into his dimension, Sure. You're not into his world. So we all are kind of walking with our own dimension, so to say. So our realities are all individual. So that's
really cool.
A brush. That's just a little swing of the fairy dust on that one.
That's incredibly
go any further
profound,
because we wouldn't have near enough time. But think about that.
It's a beautiful thought, and I agree. I think that our realities are individualistic, and the way we perceive the world
perceptions,
is individualistic as well. And I use that a lot on the show. It's like reality is subjective. People say, can make claims about, well, that's not real. It's like, really, well, as soon as somebody believes in something, then it becomes real. And nobody can argue that. And there's been so many thought experiments in physics that have shown that things manifest according to expectation, or that things change. Even things like prayer changes the chemical freezing process of water. and as does anger, so you're altering reality with those very emotions. And how profound does it get? How much more does
power of suggestion is like the hugest thing, and
Right.
that's one thing I always said to my students. I won't power suggest you. I always let you come to me with what's happening to you, and we'll go from there. But I would never tell anybody, this is how it's going to be, and that's how it's going to turn out, and that's what's going to happen, because you don't know that. They're an individual, and the cryptid they're dealing with is individual. It's a whole different setting. You can never predict a cryptid. I'm going to say that as a huge blanket statement that is fact. You can never predict these things, and so don't even try, because it would be deadly on your part to even go that close or go that into it, to think that you go, oh, well, they're my friend, Hey, I've got a lot of what I would call, quote unquote,
friends,
relationships out there.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. And not even acquaintances. They're there, okay? But I'm human, so I stay on this side. It's kind of like walking the razor's edge at all times when you're with that subject, because if you go too far into their world, you know what? You slip, you lose your feet, and you sound like a kook, and you really do become kooky. I mean, it really does happen to the best of some people.
So,
and then it's the same if you stay too far over here and you're not brave enough to go a little bit over there, then it's the same thing as you're going to slice your feet off. You're going to stuck over here.
Okay, we're going to go to our last break.
It's walking the razor's edge.
We're going to go to our last break. We'll be right back, and we can definitely continue that. That was a beautiful thought. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go away. We'll be right back.
McCabe, aka
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the last half hour of our show tonight. It is just absolutely screamed by. I can't even believe it. It is a time anomaly on this show. I swear to God, it's just what is going on. It can't quite possibly be an hour and a half we've already gotten through. It feels like 15 minutes. But our special guest tonight is Miss Shel Dion, who is joining us, and we are talking about all things cryptid and paranormal, and we were just on a really wonderful thought about reality and having our parallel dimensions, and as she explained it, it was we have our own lives, and we have other people around us in their own lives, and these are like our own dimensions, and I thought that was a really beautiful and profound thought, but Shel, it's just always a pleasure, and I'm so thrilled that you're here with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you doing this for me, and letting me get some of the information out there that needs to be released before something happens to me where I'm not able to do that. And there's been so many people out there that have been supportive to me over the years, and I want to say a huge thank you if they're out there listening or if they click on this later and hear it. Thank you. I really have appreciated any kind of help, support, just a thumbs up, a pat on the back, anything that you've done, and I've appreciated all of that. There's been a lot of great people in this world. I didn't mean to go off on the Bigfoot community as a whole. There are a lot of great people out there, but there's a lot of people out there that I may think that maybe they're planted to cause a ruckus, so that
That's a good point,
things are not presented properly when there was something really dramatic that could have been shared and taught, and somebody jumped on it that's maybe even paid to do this and say and discredit somebody. Keep your mind about that. If everybody could tune out the negative ones that are pointing fingers at you when you get attacked, when you do these shows or you share your truth, keep going. Close your eyes, put the blinders on, and always remember, when they got one finger pointing at you, they got three pointing back at themselves. So you just stay true to you, stay true to your research, and find those that collaborate with you. Find your groupies. Your groupies are supportive. Your groupies will be out there, and they find information for you that collaborate what you're saying. So, don't get caught up in the personal thing of it and personal aspect of it. The best advice I could give anybody is to keep your blinders on, keep moving forward, but don't stay so closed up that you're not letting those around you help you. And, they come to me in private messages going, hey, I ran into this person and they've got identical information, and can I give your phone number out? Well, yes, you can. I've done that, and I've met great people that way, a lot of collaborations, huge shout outs to, Freeman Young, J.C. Johnson. Oh my God, I miss him so much. Jack Carey. Rob Shaw, people like that have just been amazing as to what I do. And those are people to keep in mind out there to watch, because they are knowers and they are achievers, and they will give it to you, the truth, no matter what it is, no matter how hard it is to swallow for some of you out there that think that all cryptids are just perfect. I'm sorry, they're not all great. I've been dealing with this stuff for like my whole life. Yes, I've had some great relationships with different Bigfoot clans, but I'm here to tell you, there's been, less than one handful of really scary stuff that happened with Bigfoot. So that's very minor considering how much I put into it and for how many years. Dogman, that totaled up to be a little more negatives, but it wasn't every single time I was out there in the field with them. There was just, random, maybe 20 times of how many years, 365 days a year, and you guys know how much I dove in. So, not everything is bad, okay? Not everything is good. And you just got to keep that in mind when you're in the field. Don't ever start looking at anything like it's the puppy in the window or it belongs to you. Please don't feed the wildlings That's my term for all cryptids, wildlings. Feeding them is going to not only may hurt other critters out there, but it also may get you hurt because it'll create expectation, for one. Number two, when you're talking about Bigfoot, super intelligent, they will feel bribed and they won't respect you. You may be giving their children something that makes them sick. You know, they're not used to that kind of a diet. And here we are. There's people out there giving them people food and candy and everything. Oh, my God. It just makes me nuts. Yeah. I could go on and on about that. But, okay, don't feed the wildlings, okay? They survive without you. They've been doing it for a long time. They don't need you now. That's my biggest advice for anybody getting into research. You can go about this without giving them anything. I do it.
Sure.
I do it. I've always done it. You don't have to give them a thing.
No.
Actually, I think that gets you more respect with them.
Right, because I mean, our foods are poisonous pretty much to us too.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
So I can imagine what it would do to a system that has never experienced all these chemicals and processes and weird, Franken
sugar.
foods. Yeah.
God.
Yeah, I mean it's horrible for us, and like you look at the state of health in our population. We're living, our lifespan might be longer, but you have more diabetes, more, weird things popping up that never occurred before as these weird foods are introduced and these Franken foods are brought out to save the world, and they end up just destroying so much. So what does it do to an...
Well, even when you go buy a steak, what do you get? Something that's dyed. It's full of red dye.
Right, yeah, that's probably true too. Ugh. And I love steak, and that's hard. That's hard to hear, but
scared you. So how about for the rest of the show? How about let's take some questions and hearing these gigantic explosions, and the dogs will just hit the deck, then they start barking, and the neighborhood's just kind of looking around, looking in the sky for smoke, like what blew up, and nobody ever sees anything. Nobody ever finds anything. And it leaves you wondering, did that just, because it does sound like it may come from under the ground. So it's like, I know they're not fracking in this area, so what is that noise and what's going on?
So you mean bases as in like military bases or government bases underground?
No, there's like these they had this map, and it was of tunnels. Tunnels.
Oh.
And I know that the Bigfoot are ground dwellers in the winter. I know that if the weather starts to get nasty, they go under. I know that in the fall, they can walk up next to you, and it smells like they just dug a grave. I mean, they're just full of dirt and stuff. And it can be various times. It could be late September, or it could be late October. And usually that gives me the chance to go, hey, are you already in? And, they'll say, well, yeah, we've been fortunate. Fall has been late this year. Or fall is, going to be over early, and winter's coming soon. And, they'll lay out the whole winter for me, what to expect. And they've yet to be wrong. I don't know. But somehow they got an intelligence that we don't know, or they're in contact with something that gives them details. I don't know. But I do know they're underground dwellers. When I had that run-in with the species number 2, the rake, the one thing that hit my mind was they had things out there in the snow with no clothes on, no nothing. Where is it staying warm at around here? For the most part, it's pretty flat here. We do have a few hills and stuff like that, but they're not significant, and they're far and few between. So where are they going? Where are they coming from?
Right.
I had 1,000 questions on that alone.
Oh, man. And it looks like our stream is suffering on the YouTube. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's on and off. It's on and off.
Yeah, we're apparently buffering quite a bit there. So apparently somebody's trying to...
I thought it was me.
No. No, but, it's not unusual on the portal, of course, but it's hard to know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, it's been on and off like 4 times. People have mentioned it.
Have it? I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are watching on YouTube.
The government.
Honest to God, that's what came through my head. Is just like, Oh, is it the Men in Black again? 'Cause now it looks like it's back now.
Yeah,
but,
it's back now again.
But we did a show on the Men in Black once, and you wouldn't believe how many things went wrong.
Oh, my God, it was crazy.
It was just horrid. It was like, oh.
Oh, I could tell you some stories that happened to me concerning that whole topic. It's scary.
It is, and it's just this idea that they're just aware of everything. It's like, oh my God.
And they did scare me quiet for a while. I'll tell you, it was so intense that they did scare me quiet for a while. And then, me and my bullhead and my horns, I'm just like, I'm trudging forward. You're not scaring me. You're not stopping me.
Oh, man. But it looks like the health is the stream is back okay right now. It looks good. Everything is leveled off. So, whew. So, any other questions?
Any more questions?
I haven't seen any pop up because the stream's been on and off. So
that's true. We're kind of relying on the chat room to hear what people want to hear about. But I have a billion questions, of course. With the how do you know if a clan is going to be decent or not? I mean, is there any real obvious indicators that people could know? Like, oh, I gotta stay absolutely away from this area that I believe has Sasquatch in it, or is it just one of those things you kind of got to wait and see?
Well, okay. So when I have students, I keep them in class a long time before I let them into the field, so that when they do get to that point, that when they're going into an area, they've learned how to use more senses than just your eyes, ears, and nose, okay? Your sixth sense is a big thing, and staying tuned into all the energy, because even telepathy is done through energy.
Sure.
So when you feel like you're being stared at and the hair is standing up on the back of your neck, typically you are. But how does it feel? Does it feel like somebody's just noticed you and you're watching you? Or do you feel like you're being hunted? Do you feel like something's staring you down? Before I ever go into a, whether it's at night or during the day, it doesn't really even matter. I have a way about going in. Usually when I pull up, of course, I don't go to places where there's a bunch of other people going, for one.
Right.
So when I pull up, if it's at night, headlights go off and I just kind of roll in with the parking lights on. And then I'll just sit quietly with the windows down and just listen to what's going on for a good 20, 30 minutes before I even move out of the car. And then at that point, I always ask permission, and I'll say, if this is a bad time, break a stick loud enough I can hear it, and I'll go.
Oh.
And I wait. And there have been times that a stick or something comes, wheeling through the forest and crashes, and I'm like, okay, it's a no-go. We go somewhere else. And so, communication's everything. If you think they can't communicate with you, you got another thing coming. They can understand you. If they're not understanding your language, they're understanding your thought. So they have what we call watchers, and there's always the watcher tree. You guys can do this on your own. Go into an area that's like highly traveled, like say a boat launch or something like that. And I never go to a place at night that I haven't examined during the day first.
Right.
I want a good feel for where everything is and what it is. And I may do that 5-6 times before I ever attempt it at night.
Okay.
But find the watcher tree. It's fun to do this because when you first start even approaching that place, you can look up at the top of that tree and you'll usually catch some little eyes, because all little ones have jobs. And I talked about Mark, one of my students earlier. One of his first prints was found a little tiny, about the length 7 inches of your hand, mud Sasquatch prints running across blacktop, and you see it going right up that tree. And when you see those trees about every foot or foot and a half, the bark is pushed in and smooth. So from a distance, it looks like that tree's got something wrong with it, or like it's kind of striped. But you get up there close to it, and you actually feel the bark in that area where it's lighter or darker, and you could feel the difference. And you can see where they constantly climb, and that's the watcher tree. It's going to be the largest tree, and it's going to have it's going to be the one that can see the most area of where our people would come from, be it from a road, a turn in the road, entrance into a park, any of that. And, typically, usually you can't see it because they look back at the forest and, that's where they're given their eye shine, like, hey, it's so and so, or it's okay, or red, it's everybody on high alert, whatever. To survive, to work as a community out there. So everybody has their job, and the little ones get jobs as soon as they can sit still long enough. They get a